In 1768, the Republic of Genoa, tired of trying to control a rebellious island, sold Corsica to the Kingdom of France. The Corsicans did not accept this quietly. Under the leadership of a fierce independence fighter named Pasquale Paoli, they fought to remain free. In May of 1769, French forces crushed Paoli's rebellion at the Battle of Ponte Novo. Corsica officially became French territory. Among the men who had supported Paoli's cause was a young lawyer from the town of Ajaccio named Carlo Bonaparte. He owned a 3-story stone house in the city, a vineyard in the countryside, and a modest but respectable standing among the island's minor nobility. After the defeat at Ponte Novo, Carlo made a calculated decision. He swore allegiance to France. It was a pragmatic move, and it would open doors for his family that Corsican independence never could have. Just months later, on August 15th, 1769, in that stone house in Ajaccio, Carlo and his wife Maria Letizia welcomed their second surviving son into the world. They named him Napoleone di Bonaparte. He grew up as one of 8 children, Corsican in blood and spirit, in a household that was proud but not wealthy by French standards. And in 1779, at just 10 years old, his father sent him across the sea to Brienne-le-Château, a small town in northern France, to attend a military preparatory school. Picture this: a 10-year-old boy from Corsica, speaking French with a thick foreign accent, surrounded by the sons of mainland French nobility who had every social advantage he lacked. He was, by every measure, an outsider. But something happened at Brienne that would define the rest of his life. While Napoleone struggled early with the French language, he found something he could master completely: mathematics. In a school full of boys judged by bloodline and birth, mathematics didn't care where you came from. It only cared whether your answer was correct. Napoleone excelled. His mathematical ability opened the path toward artillery, the one branch of the military where precision and calculation mattered more than aristocratic pedigree. He was already, without knowing it, choosing the one arena where merit could outweigh privilege. Here is the first lesson of this story. Your origin does not define you, your ambition does. A Corsican boy with a funny accent and no fortune was about to become one of the most consequential men in the history of Europe. And it started with a decision to master the one subject where no one could hold his background against him. In 1784, at the age of 15, Napoleone was admitted into the École Militaire in Paris, the elite Royal Military Academy of France. There, he trained specifically as an artillery officer, sharpening the mathematical skills he had built at Brienne into real battlefield expertise. But the world around him was about to change completely. France in the late 1780s was a kingdom on the edge of collapse, crushing debt, a starving population, and a monarchy that refused to adapt. In 1789, the French Revolution erupted, and the entire social order that had once excluded men like Napoleone began to crumble. For a young, ambitious officer from a modest Corsican family, revolution was not a threat, it was an opportunity. In March of 1792, at just 22 years old, Napoleon was elected Lieutenant Colonel of the Corsican National Guard. Weeks later, he personally suppressed an uprising in Ajaccio on Easter Sunday, an early sign of the decisiveness that would define his military career. In July of 1793, he published a pro-Jacobin political pamphlet titled Le Souper de Beaucaire, The Supper of Beaucaire. It was a bold political statement, and it caught the attention of a powerful man, Augustin Robespierre, brother of the infamous revolutionary leader Maximilien Robespierre. This connection would prove critical, but Corsica itself was turning against him. His political falling out with his former hero, Pasquale Paoli, forced the entire Bonaparte family to flee the island. On July 11th, 1793, they escaped Corsica, landing in the French mainland port city of Toulon just 2 days later. The boy who had once been shaped by Corsica had now permanently left it behind, exiled from his own homeland, forced to build his future entirely within France. He was no longer a Corsican nationalist. He was now fully and irreversibly a man of the French Revolution. Toulon, a major French naval port, had fallen into the hands of royalist rebels who allied themselves with British and Spanish forces against the revolutionary government. From August 29th to December 19th, 1793, French Republican forces laid siege to the city, determined to retake it. Napoleon Bonaparte, now beginning to use the more French spelling of his name Napoleon, was placed in charge of the artillery. It was here that his mathematical training and his instinct for precision finally met a real battlefield. He identified a critical high ground position, positioned his cannons with devastating accuracy, and helped orchestrate the assault that broke the siege and forced the British fleet to retreat. Toulon fell to Republican forces. The result was staggering. On December 22nd, 1793, at just 24 years old, Napoleon Bonaparte was promoted to brigadier general. In a matter of months, an unknown artillery officer from a minor Corsican family had become one of the youngest generals in all of France. This is the moment the legend begins, not through inherited title, not through political favor alone, through calculated, decisive action at exactly the right moment. Toulon was the spark. Everything that followed, the empire, the conquests, the crown, traces back to a young officer who positioned his cannons correctly on a hillside in southern France. Fame in revolutionary France was a dangerous currency. Napoleon's rapid rise had been tied closely to Augustin Robespierre and his brother Maximilian, the very men who dominated the bloody period known as the Reign of Terror. Then, in July of 1794, the political wind shifted violently. The Thermidorian reaction overthrew the Robespierre faction, and Maximilien Robespierre was executed. Because of his known association with the Robespierre brothers, Napoleon was arrested between August 9th and August 20th, 1794. For a brief, precarious period, the young general's entire future, and possibly his life, hung in the balance. He was eventually released, cleared of serious wrongdoing. But the lesson was clear. Proximity to power in revolutionary France could destroy a man as quickly as it could elevate him. Napoleon adapted again. On October 5th, 1795, royalist forces attempted an uprising against the revolutionary government in Paris, an event remembered as the 13th Vendémiaire Revolt. Napoleon was given command of the city's defense. Using artillery against the rebel forces in the streets of Paris, a tactic later famously described as a whiff of grape shot, he crushed the uprising decisively. Almost overnight, Napoleon transformed from a general under suspicion into the savior of the Parisian government. In February of 1796, he further cemented his authority within the capital by closing down the Pantheon Club, a radical political group whose influence threatened the fragile new order. He had survived arrest, suspicion, and the collapse of his political patrons. And through it all, he had become indispensable to the government that now ruled France. In March of 1796, Napoleon was given command of the Army of Italy, a force that was underfed, underpaid, and poorly equipped compared to the powerful Austrian Empire it was meant to fight. On paper, this was a losing assignment. From April 10th, 1796 to April 2nd, 1797, Napoleon conducted what military historians still study today as one of the most brilliant campaigns in European history. He did not have the numbers. He did not have the resources. What he had was speed, audacity, and an unmatched ability to concentrate his forces at exactly the right point on the battlefield. Time and again, he outmaneuvered larger Austrian armies, striking fast, dividing enemy forces, and winning decisive victories across the Italian peninsula. His reputation transformed from promising young general to the most formidable commander in Europe. Here is the deeper lesson of the Italian campaign. Napoleon never relied on superior numbers. He relied on speed, deception, and courage. While his enemies moved cautiously and by the old rule book, Napoleon moved fast, took calculated risks, and struck where his opponents least expected it. By 1797, the man who had once been an obscure Corsican artillery officer was now a national hero across France, and Europe had begun to understand that a new kind of military power had arrived. On May 19, 1798, Napoleon set sail from France with the Armée d'Orient bound for Egypt. His goal was ambitious: to strike at British interests by controlling the route to India, and to bring French influence, along with French science and scholarship, to the ancient land of the Nile. The campaign began with military success, but it soon turned dark. On March 7, 1799, Napoleon's forces captured the city of Jaffa after a short siege. In the aftermath, facing a captured force of between 2,000 and 4,000 prisoners he could neither feed nor guard, Napoleon ordered their execution. It remains one of the most brutal and heavily criticized decisions of his entire career, a stain on the record of a man otherwise celebrated for genius and vision. The campaign continued to unravel. From March 20th to May 21st, 1799, French forces laid siege to the city of Acre, but were ultimately forced to retreat in failure. Napoleon's Syrian campaign was over, and with it, his dream of an Eastern empire. Yet from this same expedition came one of history's greatest scientific discoveries. On July 15, 1799, a French lieutenant named Pierre-François Bouchard, an engineer serving in Napoleon's army, discovered a stone slab near the town of Rashid, known to Europeans as Rosetta. Inscribed in 3 scripts, hieroglyphic, Demotic, and ancient Greek, the Rosetta Stone would eventually unlock the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphics, opening thousands of years of lost history to the modern world. But Napoleon himself would not stay to see the campaign through to its end. On August 23, 1799, he abandoned his army in Alexandria and sailed back to France, leaving his soldiers behind in a foreign land. It was a decision driven by pure ambition, because back in Paris, France's government was collapsing, and Napoleon knew that opportunity was calling. Napoleon returned to a France in political chaos. The revolutionary government, known as the Directory, was weak, corrupt, and widely despised. On November 9, 1799, a date remembered in the French revolutionary calendar as the 18th of Brumaire, Napoleon led a coup that overthrew the Directory entirely. The French Revolution, 10 years of upheaval that had begun in 1789, was effectively over. In its place stood a new government known as the Consulate, with Napoleon installed as first consul, the most powerful man in France. His hold on power was tested almost immediately. On June 14, 1800, Napoleon personally led his forces against an Austrian army at the Battle of Marengo in northern Italy. The battle nearly ended in disaster for the French, but a late counterattack turned near defeat into narrow victory. Napoleon's authority was preserved. Then, on March 21st, 1804, Napoleon achieved something that would outlast every battle he ever fought. The Code Napoleon, the Napoleonic Civil Code, was officially adopted as the law of France. It established principles of religious freedom, property rights, and legal equality that reshaped French civil law and influenced legal systems across the world, principles that remain in effect to this very day. Here is a lesson worth remembering. Battlefield glory fades. Laws and institutions endure. Of everything Napoleon Bonaparte ever built, the civil code may be the achievement that has shaped the most lives across the longest span of time. On May 2nd, 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte was proclaimed Emperor of the French. The revolutionary general who had once fought against the excesses of monarchy had now become a monarch himself. The coronation, held on December 2nd, 1804, in the Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris, remains one of the most famous moments in European history. In a calculated act of symbolism, Napoleon took the crown from the hands of Pope Pius VII and placed it upon his own head, declaring, in that single gesture, that his power came not from the church, but from himself alone. His wife Josephine was crowned empress beside him. Napoleon's empire now stretched across much of continental Europe, and his rivalries with the other great powers intensified. On June 25, 1807, in one of the most striking diplomatic scenes of the era, Napoleon met with Tsar Alexander I of Russia on a raft floating in the middle of the Niemen River, a neutral meeting point between their two empires. Days later, on July 7, 1807, the first of the treaties of Tilsit was signed, ending the War of the Fourth Coalition. France and Russia, for the moment, were at peace. Napoleon stood at the absolute peak of his power, an emperor who had crowned himself, who negotiated as an equal with the Tsar of Russia, and who commanded more territory than any Frenchman in history before him. But even at the height of an empire, cracks begin to show. Napoleon's forces had become entangled in a brutal and grinding war on the Iberian Peninsula, fighting against Spanish resistance forces and their British allies. On July 28th and 29th, 1809, French forces suffered a serious defeat at the Battle of Talavera against a combined Spanish and British army. It was a clear signal that Napoleon's military dominance was not unlimited, that the empire had limits, and that those limits were beginning to be tested. Amid these military strains, Napoleon also moved to secure his dynasty. Having divorced Josephine, who had failed to produce an heir, he married Archduchess Marie-Louise of Austria on April 1st, 1810, a political alliance meant to cement peace with the Austrian Empire, and finally secure a bloodline heir to the French throne. The empire looked as powerful as ever from the outside, but Spain had revealed a truth that would soon be proven on a far larger and far more devastating scale: that Napoleon's ambitions were beginning to outpace even his extraordinary abilities. Of every chapter in Napoleon's life, none carries more weight and none delivers a harder lesson than the invasion of Russia in 1812. Napoleon assembled the Grande Armée, a force of roughly 500,000 men, one of the largest military forces ever gathered in European history up to that point, and marched into Russian territory. He took up residence in the Kremlin in Moscow itself, believing the capture of the ancient capital would force Tsar Alexander to surrender. On September 7th, 1812, Napoleon's forces clashed with the Russian army under General Mikhail Kutuzov at the Battle of Borodino, near Moscow. It was one of the bloodiest single-day battles in the history of warfare, with staggering casualties on both sides. And yet it produced no decisive victory for either army. Days later, French forces entered Moscow, but the city that awaited them was nearly empty. And on the night of September 14th, 1812, fires began to spread across it. Russian citizens themselves had set the blaze, determined to destroy their own capital rather than let Napoleon claim it intact. The fire burned for 4 days, until September 18th, and when it was finally extinguished, roughly 75% of Moscow had been reduced to ash. It would take more than 20 years to rebuild the city. Napoleon had captured Moscow, and it had cost him everything. With no city left to occupy, no surrender from the Tsar, and winter closing in fast, the Grande Armée had no choice but to retreat. On December 5th, 1812, Napoleon left his army behind, handing command to Marshal Joachim Murat, and rushed back to Paris to protect his political position. The Russian campaign, the single greatest military catastrophe of his career, was over. Of the roughly 500,000 soldiers who had marched into Russia that summer, only a small fraction would ever return home. It stands as one of the most devastating military disasters in recorded history, and it marked the beginning of the end for the Napoleonic Empire. Word of the Russian disaster spread across Europe, and Napoleon's enemies smelled blood for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Austria, Prussia, Sweden, and Russia united into a powerful coalition, determined to finally bring the French emperor down. From October 16th to October 19th, 1813, the two sides met at the Battle of Leipzig, a battle so vast in scale, it became known as the Battle of the Nations. It ended in a decisive coalition victory. Napoleon's forces in Germany were shattered, and his once unstoppable empire began to unravel at a terrifying speed. The coalition armies pushed toward Paris itself. On April 6, 1814, Napoleon was forced into his first abdication, and by April 11th, the terms of his exile were finalized. He would be sent to the small Mediterranean island of Elba, a stunning fall for a man who had once crowned himself emperor of nearly all of continental Europe. His exile on Elba lasted from May 3rd, 1814, to February 26, 1815. During this same period of loss, on May 29, 1814, Josephine de Beauharnais, the woman he had once crowned empress beside him, died at the Château de Malmaison at the age of 50. The empire was gone. His wife was gone. Napoleon Bonaparte, ruler of Europe, was now a prisoner of circumstance on a small island. And by every reasonable expectation, his story should have ended there. It did not. On February 26, 1815, Napoleon did the unthinkable, taking advantage of a moment when the British and French ships guarding Elba were absent, and a carnival celebration was distracting the town of Portoferraio. He escaped the island aboard a brig called the Inconstant, accompanied by roughly 1,000 loyal soldiers. On March 1, 1815, he landed at Golfe Juan in southern France, beginning what history now calls the 100 Days Campaign. Rather than being arrested as an escaped exile, Napoleon found French soldiers rallying to his side as he marched north. On March 20th, 1815, he entered Paris in triumph, and his second reign as emperor began. The great powers of Europe responded immediately, declaring Napoleon an outlaw and forming the Seventh Coalition against him. On June 18th, 1815, the decisive confrontation came at the Battle of Waterloo in what is now Belgium. Facing the combined forces of the Duke of Wellington and the Prussian commander Gebhard von Blücher, Napoleon suffered a total and final defeat. On June 22, 1815, Napoleon abdicated for the second and final time. On July 15, 1815, at Rochefort, he formally surrendered to British Captain Frederick Maitland aboard the HMS Bellerophon. There would be no third comeback. From October 1815 until May of 1821, Napoleon lived out his final exile on the remote island of Saint Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, thousands of miles from Paris, from Europe, and from any hope of return. On May 5th, 1821, Napoleon Bonaparte died at Longwood House on St. Helena at the age of 51. The cause of his death remains debated by historians to this day, though it was initially recorded as stomach cancer. Nearly 2 decades later, on December 15, 1840, France gave Napoleon the grand farewell his life had earned. His remains were brought back from Saint Helena and interred in a state funeral in Paris at the Saint-Jérôme Chapel within Les Invalides, the same city where he had once leaves behind. Move faster than your competition, the way he moved through Italy. Master the one skill where you can compete on pure merit, the way he mastered mathematics as a friendless boy at Brienne. Build something that outlasts you, the way his civil code still shapes lives across the world 2 centuries later. And when your own Waterloo comes, because for every one of us, it eventually will, remember that a defeat is not a life sentence. It is simply the final chapter of one campaign, not the final chapter of the man. Don't let your Waterloo be the end of your story. Write the rest of it yourself.